Greetings, folks, and welcome back to Son of the Cinema. Last week we had John Borman's nostalgic look back at his childhood in Hope and Glory. And today's movie is another nostalgic look back at another director's childhood, this time Federico Fellini, the Italian master. And one of his greatest movies was Amarcord, which is kind of a reminiscence of his time growing up as a young boy in a coastal town, Italy, called Rimini. And this is such a unique film. Any of you who've seen Fellini's movies, he was the master of magical realism. So when great movies of his include Eight and a Half, La Strada, beautiful movie. I'm thinking of some of the other ones. Of course, La Dolce Vita. And Amarcord was another fantastic movie that Fellini made. In fact, it won the foreign language Oscar for best foreign language picture. But you have to take with a pinch of salt when it says autobiographical. Fellini kind of mixed the truth with fiction all the time. So because it's magical realism, you kind of have to take with a pinch of salt what is true and what isn't. So it's kind of, I would say, more semi-autobiographical than biographical. But you can be sure, just like the enigma of Bob Dylan, Fellini plays his cards close to his chest, and there's probably a lot of truth included in the movie, but he'd like you to think that it's fantasy. It's really such a charming movie. It opens with these sort of seed pods blowing through the coastal town, and kind of puffballs, and everybody goes crazy. The puffballs are here, the puffballs are here, because that's the sign that spring has come. And the whole movie is very cyclic. It takes us through spring, autumn, winter, spring, back to spring again. And it's the whole kind of cycle of life, birth, death, marriage, all seen through the eyes of this young boy growing up, Tita, and his family. But the whole film is kind of full of these little kind of episodic scenes and vignettes. So it's not fully through the eyes of Tita. It's just kind of catching slice of life. And this is, a lot of foreign language films are brilliant at that, how they capture a slice of life. It's not necessarily a story that has a beginning, middle, and end. It's just these little moments of life. And Fellini was a master at this. There's so many memorable little scenes in this. When the film opens, it's, as I mentioned, the advent of spring, and the town celebrates it by this kind of weird ritual, the burning of the witch, where they bring out this kind of doll and build this huge bonfire, and the whole town comes, and it really captures that incredible European, specifically Italian culture. Just such a joie de vivre and embracing life in all its fullness. And there we see, the introduction of a lot of the characters in the film: the blind musician with a foul mouth, the buxom tobacconist, the town prostitute Volpina, the elegant lady that everyone aspires to be like, Grandisca, and a host of other characters. And it's just total madcap mayhem. So you've got all sorts of vignettes. You've got Tita going to school. You've got all the kind of messing around at school that happens. There's a hilarious scene where one of the boys, they build a huge pipe and put it right from the back of the class to the front of the class, where some kid is kind of mathematical genius is going on the board doing something, and then the kid at the back urinates through this huge tube, and this guy gets into trouble. But it has such a charm, this movie. So many great scenes. There's, of course, a construction site scene where Volpina arrives, with her wares, and the construction manager has to shoo her away. And of course, Grandisca walking down the main street and all the kids following her. And of course, with this curvy, wonderful, typical Italian woman, Sophia Loren, Claudia Cardinale, the sway of the hips, and everybody idolizes Grandisca. But the movie sort of still, with this magical realism and joy, it's still got undertones of darkness to it. And one of those is the rise of fascism in Italy in the 1930s when the movie is set. So you've got the presence of these black coats. And, it's really interesting because the kind of whole town is caught up in this frenzy of Mussolini, the hero. And, everyone's caught up in this mass kind of following something mindlessly, this tyranny. So from that point of view, it certainly has resonance for today. This kind of blind following without questioning anything and just not seeing the tyranny for what it is. And there's quite a disturbing scene when the father gets taken in because he sort of said some anti-Mussolini statements and gets taken in and interrogated. So all these scenes kind of get thrown in the midst of all this, which kind of brings the film back down to earth. And then you go straight into the typical Fellini fantasy sequence. We've got 30 concubines all wearing burqas rocking up at the local hotel. You've got another weird fantasy sequence of... I'm trying to think of the specific scene, but kind of really moments in the film where it blurs the lines between realism and magic, and that's kind of the joy, the genius of Fellini. And there's some marvelous moments, but they always kind of bring us back to the kind of harsh realities of life. There's a wonderful transition from going from this incredible, beautiful, ornate hotel to an insane asylum, which is quite a poignant transition. And it really marks again one of Fellini's favorite themes, which is kind of the decay of life, the cycle of life, the going from the glory to the gutter to the transcendence of life, and just the fact that everything has its season. And there's a wonderful sequence when it goes from this hotel to the insane asylum where the family go and visit the uncle, Teo, who's been incarcerated. And there's a hilarious scene where they take him out to a farm for his kind of outing. And he climbs up this tree and starts screaming, "I want a woman, I want a woman." Just non-stop for 5 hours. They can't get him out of the tree. And then they have to try everything. And eventually a dwarf nun appears. Of course, another classic Fellini, just the bizarre, surreal characters that Fellini throws into his movies. There's this dwarf nun who manages to get Teo out of the tree after he's finished his rant about he wants a woman. And then the town sort of shoots out to... there's a rumor that this incredible ocean liner is coming from America. And there's a wonderful scene where all the boats go out, but then the mist comes in. And they can't see the liner, and Grandiska is on the boat. And there's this wonderful moment where she kind of shows her vulnerability. And she said, I had so much hope for relationships, for love, and it never came to anything. And, she said, I always wanted a long life with somebody. And it's a beautiful, poignant moment where everybody in the town never really approached her because they never thought they were good enough. And here's this woman who's so vulnerable and is just longing for love. It's a beautiful scene. And then the sort of mists part, and through the mist comes this massive ocean liner. It's like such a magical moment in the movie, and the town is absolutely enthralled. Then you've got the kids sort of still wandering through the mist, and a child that comes... Of course, the film is chock-a-block of typical, amazing, surreal Fellini images of a kid coming through the mist and this white bull suddenly materializing out of nowhere. And the kid is terrified, and the bull just sort of goes on its way. Another moment where the kids are dancing, Tito and his friends are dancing imaginary waltzes with nobody there, going, where's love? Where can I find it? There's such a romanticism about this movie, which is very much at the heart of Fellini. And the film kind of wraps up with the scene where, and again, bringing us back to realism, there's a sort of, out of the blue comes a family member sort of in hospital who ends up dying. And so it really, Fellini has the whole cycle of birth, marriage, love, death, and of course the film ends with a wedding and the puffballs. Again, we've come back to spring. This wonderful chaotic wedding where it's raining and the bride is sopping and there's a dog barking and the blind everybody forgets about the blind musician and he's happily playing his accordion with the dog and everyone's left. This is classic, beautiful, passionate Fellini. It's one of my favorite movies of his and one of my favorite films of all time. It's landed up on countless best film lists. As I mentioned, it won the Oscar for best foreign language film. Fellini was nominated for best director. It was nominated for best screenplay. It won the New York Critics Best Film for best foreign language film, best director, the Kansas City Film Awards, best foreign language film, the Golden Globes Italy best film, numerous awards. But it really is a transcendent experience. But any of you looking for kind of a narrative that is a beginning, middle, and end, you'll be disappointed. This is classic Fellini. It's just moments, glimpses, surreal scenes, episodic vignettes, and of course the classic scene where Tito goes in the buxom tobacconist he's been fantasizing about. He manages to kind of get into the shop, and they have a little encounter, which doesn't quite end how he expected. Classic Fellini. It's a joy to watch, a wonderful movie, and of course we cannot but mention Nino Rota's magnificent score, one of the best soundtracks he ever did. It sticks in your head for years. It's so romantic, so lyrical, just a beautiful piece of music, a classic piece of cinema soundtrack. So spur down Amarcord, find it. It's Fellini at his very best. Wonderful, wonderful celebration of life.